Amigos, ¿qué tal? Soy Francisco y me encuentro en Praga. Estoy muy contento porque tuve una entrevista muy buena con Katja. Ella es la creadora del canal de YouTube Deutsch Für Euch, que quiere decir alemán para ustedes. Es un canal que tiene mucha acogida. Ella básicamente te enseña a aprender alemán de una manera más dinámica, de una manera más lúdica. Es una chica bastante carismática. Su canal tiene más de 200.000 seguidores. Más que todo son personas cuya lengua materna es el inglés. Y en esta entrevista hablamos de muchas cosas, entre ellas, si eres mayor, es posible aprender un idioma si estás en base 2, 3, 4. Segundo, tienes que viajar al país donde se hable el idioma para poder dominarlo. Y por supuesto también hablamos de por qué los métodos tradicionales de idiomas, los institutos en general causan mucha frustración y decepción en los alumnos si no logran dominar el idioma, entre otras cosas. En verdad que la entrevista estuvo muy buena y no se olviden por supuesto de seguirme en mi canal Francismente. Hello, Katja, it's such a privilege for me to be here. You know that you have followers from many parts, even from South America.
Yes,
and
a lot of people from Brazil, actually.
Yeah, from Brazil as well, and from Peru, from Colombia. Tell me, from your point of view, what is more important, self-discipline or motivation when it comes to language learning?
I think motivation is always key with language as well as with any skill, because any skill takes a long time to build. I think there's that, that thing with like you need 10,000 hours in something to be an expert, and that's definitely true for language. And I think self-discipline is something you can force on yourself, but it takes a lot of mental effort. And I think self-discipline is something that comes automatically if you are motivated. If motivation isn't automatic, of course, then it becomes an issue of how do I produce motivation. But if it's between those two, definitely motivation.
What do you think of the traditional learning method? In South America, there are a lot of people who want to learn German, but they go to a language school and it isn't effective at all. So what's the main problem from your point of view?
I think language schools, as well as any schools, it's also true for schools with kids, has the issue of trying to teach 30 people or however many with the exact same method. And of course that's always a common denominator, so there's going to be a lot of people who it works for, but there's also going to be a lot of people who that isn't optimized for. And it's not on your own terms. It doesn't go with what necessarily motivates you, because everybody has a different motivation, so you might start with different things. And that's why I think we're seeing a move towards online learning with YouTube, learning with online language schools, etc., because you can pick and choose your motivation, your method much more. Like I always say, you will find out what works for you. Even my channel, I would love if everybody loved my channel and thought it was the most useful resource out there, but in fact, something else works for everybody, and that's great, because then there's so much out there now that you can just pick and choose.
There are major differences between Spanish and German, to the point that if I want to study German from scratch and I go to a language school, I am lost. I can't understand almost anything. So do you think that it might be helpful to have Spanish and German lessons?
You mean from Spanish to German?
Yeah, I mean that the teacher can speak my mother tongue as well.
Yes, I do see the point in, what's believed to be the most helpful or best way to teach a language nowadays. Start speaking only in the target language as soon as possible. I think that's definitely true, because you want to train your brain to hear it correctly. So you should be clear that the teacher actually speaks the language very well. That's the other thing. But I do think it can be helpful, especially when you're talking about grammar and any other explicit rules. Because if you talk about specific rules in the target language, you have a double problem. You don't speak it yet, and you're trying to understand systems and rules. That's why most of my videos are in English, because I usually explain very, very difficult topics and concepts, which if I do that in German, the people who are going to understand that are a very, very small group. So I think there's merit to using Spanish in lessons, but I also think that especially exactly because it is so hard, to switch between those two, you should start with German as soon as possible.
Many people struggle to learn just one foreign language, and it's amazing. Here you can find people who master many languages. So what's the main difference between a polyglot and, let's say, a common person? Why do they have a special gift from your point of view?
I was actually talking about this to somebody just now. What is talent? And I personally think that talent is not a thing. Talent is how badly do you want to do something? And I think most polyglots are just really, really, really motivated to the point of being almost obsessive, and this is not a negative thing, it's just a brain thing, about learning languages. Like there's some people here who speak 10 or more languages, and you think there's no way that's true. But for some people it actually is. But that takes so much work and so much time investment and so much structured method, you know. And of course it has something to do with how smart you are and figuring out what works for you. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to our first talking point. It's all about motivation. And it's totally fine that even though nowadays we know of so many people who speak so many languages, it's totally fine to know. I would say you should know 2, just so you can communicate with people, but it's totally fine to know 2 or 3 and be like, okay, that's it, I don't need more. Nobody needs to speak 10 languages. It's great if you can, but...
2 more questions. The last one,
Yeah.
well, tell me, the best teacher, native or non-native teacher? What's better?
Oh, that's a tough
tricky
decision.
question.
Well, your intuition would be to say native, right?
What's better,
But I
for you?
think native teachers often have the issue, like any native speaker, that they will not be as aware of rules and how the language works, and even mistakes that they make, because they speak the language intuitively, so it must be correct. So a really good non-native teacher can be better than an average native teacher. It really depends on how good you are at explicit knowledge about the language, I think. Again, like talking about my channel, I don't want to talk about me too much, but the reason I started my channel, even though I'm a native German speaker, is because I think about all language, very analytically. So I've had conversations with German friends where I'm like, I talk about the German language, and they're like, what? Why would you even think about that? Who cares? And I think, so natives can be really good teachers. Obviously, you can go to natives best for pronunciation, colloquial language, how do people talk nowadays? But if you want to learn the language from the ground up, I think you definitely benefit from having non-native teachers as well.
You know, many people from South America are studying German, but it's hard to find German-speaking people. So what's the best way to deal with this? Is it possible to learn a language when you aren't in the country where that language, your target language is spoken?
It is. It absolutely. That's how I learned English. I learned English by being on the internet a lot. Admittedly, I think English is a very special case because everywhere there's access to English. The internet is largely in English. A lot of movies and shows, etc., come from America, etc., etc. So English is a bit of a special case, but exactly because we have the internet today, it is totally possible, although harder, to sit at home and teach yourself any language. You should try to get immersion as soon as you can. So watch YouTube videos, watch movies. There's Netflix. We have subtitles. It's awesome. Use it. And I think that really helps.
Thank you very much.
Of course. Thank
Gracias.
you.